Hello, good evening everybody, and welcome to this latest Coaching Conversations webinar. Really delighted to have you, everyone here tonight. I think we've got around about 30 in the room so far, which is wonderful to see. So thank you firstly for giving up your evenings to be here tonight. Great lineup, and hopefully as you can see on the screen that tonight we're talking, it says about racing, and hopefully you've seen some of the communications that we're specifically talking about girls and racing, and we're going to touch on the topics of coaching women and girls, and then possibly some other areas. We'll see where the conversation goes. So I'll shortly introduce the panel that we've got here tonight. But for awareness, if you haven't attended one of the Coaching Conversations webinars before, it is a conversation. You're going to hear from the panel, Helen Scott MBE, Tiffany Fletcher, the female lead for the talent development pathway, and then Julia Klinger Moore from the clubs and coaching officer. So you'll hear from them shortly. But what we will do after you've heard a little bit from us, we'll send you into a breakout room and you can progress the conversation in there. And by request, on the last one, we had quite a few requests for a little bit more time in the breakout rooms and for the webinar overall. So tonight is scheduled in to be about 90 minutes, but you're welcome to leave, whenever you've got other commitments. No problem at all. If you hear something that is of interest, or at your club you're doing really good things for women and girls, please pop it in the chat. This is all about sharing, having that conversation, connecting with each other, and learning together. So without further ado, let me introduce the panel. So firstly, over to Helen.
Taking myself off mute there. Hi everybody. Those of you who were in the last session, you'll know me, but those of you who aren't, I'm Helen Scott. I'm currently a pilot for the tandem on the Great Britain cycling team. Also a coach. I've been a level 3 track coach for 8 years now, so I do a little bit of private coaching, and I am looking to develop my coaching skills for sort of post my cycling career. So got in touch with Robbie, and really happy to be part of these webinars, and hopefully can give some insight into my own experience as a female cyclist. I started when I was very young, so I'm really interested to hear from you guys about what you're seeing right now, currently in your clubs, and to share our experiences.
Great stuff. Thank you, Helen. So you started riding quite young. When did you start racing?
I guess it was immediately at Hales Owen Club, where I grew up, Hales Owen Athletics and Cycling Club. So I raced immediately sort of as part of that club, in our Friday night track leagues. And then it obviously developed into sort of regional and national level. So probably from the age of about 11 or 12, I was racing.
Okay. Great stuff, and we'll come back to that later. I'm sure there's going to be loads of conversation that will resonate with you tonight. So next up, over to Tiffany.
Hi everyone. So Tiffany Fletcher. I'm the talent development coach for British Cycling, focusing on females. I also coach outside of British Cycling for a local cycling club, and I also ride myself as well. Brilliant.
And you ride and race, or just riding at the minute?
Yeah, at the moment no racing, but there is no racing going on. But I'm looking forward to getting back to racing when it's available.
Yeah, I'm sure many people are. And you're going to hear from Tiffany shortly, just with a little bit of insight from the talent pathway and some of the things, the key focus areas for the talent development team. So over to Julia.
Hello, yes, so I'm Julia Klinger Moore. I'm the Coaching and Clubs Officer in the Southwest region. I was first introduced to British Cycling through the Breeze Network and the Breeze programme. So I started off as a champion back in about 2011, started working for British Cycling up in Manchester in the head office, and now I'm in the Southwest. So I've kind of come in through the recreation programme, and now most of my current work is kind of coaching and racing related. But throughout that, I've seen quite a lot of different female participation, which I'll come on to shortly.
And it was actually Julia who, sorry, I should have had your slide up then, but it was Julia who actually posed the question. So just for awareness about where the kind of topics come from, we have a number of, for the coaching conversations, that is, we have a number of kind of requests that come in to, say, the education inbox, but then we have observations from the workforce out there, some of which are on the call tonight, about kind of what's been observing in the field, and the topic for tonight actually came from Julia. So Julia, what was the I guess to set the scene, to identify the problem as we might see it? What's your observations?
Yes, so as I just mentioned, I've seen and been involved with quite a few of our sort of programs from recreation to sort of coaching and racing. So everything from really happy kind of young girls doing ready, set, ride, kind of jumping on and off the bike, through to really competitive teenage girls at development centres, which you can see there at the Torbay Bellow Park, and also some of our programs that are aimed at adult women mainly, so things like our rider development sessions and coaching to racing, which both have slightly sort of quite similar focuses. And what I've noticed across this kind of wide range of activity is just some patterns, and just kind of anecdotally, that the girls and the women at these sessions seem to engage with different parts of the sessions in different ways. So I spoke to Robbie about it, and I'll share the observations with you now that I shared with him. And it just kind of highlighted to me that maybe we just need to reflect and review on how we coach girls and women, just to see if we need to change how we coach, or if it's more about kind of marketing or the opportunities we have to kind of progressing from coaching sessions, so for example racing. So I'll share with you my observations that kind of kicked off with, and then it'd be really good to hear whether that kind of reflects what you see, and if so, if there's anything that you've kind of come up with yourselves that you do differently, or anything that we might need to think of. So the first time this kind of was really highlighted to me was when I did some Go Ride coaching at a club in Glossop. So I ran a session on cornering, and the girls and the boys were all really engaged with the session, really progressing with their skills. And then right at the end, had organised to do just a bit of a mini race, just just a really kind of fun activity at the end, just to finish it off. And the girls all instantly decided that they weren't going to take part before they'd even seen what we were going to do. And the boys were raring to go, kind of already jostling for position, and kind of getting their arms ready, out. So to kind of get round the fact that the girls didn't want to race, I didn't want them to obviously miss out on the activity, because it's what we've been leading up to. So on that occasion, I asked them to sort of test out the course for me. So they still had to do it essentially, just on their own, and they were really happy to do it. And then they kind of watched the boys race. Now it's not an issue at all that they don't want to race. Lots of girls and boys don't want to, but I have a suspicion that if they had done it, they actually would have enjoyed it, and they might have also done quite well. So as I said, just anecdotally, I know there's lots of girls who in that situation would have been raring to go, but that's not the only time I've seen it. And my second observation was I ran some coaching sessions in Plymouth for some women that regularly attend breeze rides, and they just wanted to develop their bike handling skills, or looking at longer rides, sportives, that sort of thing. So I ran a coaching session that was based almost entirely on techniques that I'd normally do in a race setting. So cornering, group riding, taking hands off your handlebars, all of those things that we do almost every session, but I just framed it all in the sort of context of a road ride. And by the end of the series of sessions, I think we did about 6 in total, some of them did start to ask questions about things like sportives, triathlons, circuit races. But I know that if I'd marketed it as a race coaching session at the beginning, I don't think any of them would have actually turned up. So as I said, I know that this is just kind of from what I've seen, and there's plenty of women and girls we know that love racing and are absolutely amazing at it. But if we're thinking about kind of increasing participation just for women riding bikes and being in coaching sessions, do we need to look at different ways of marketing the sessions, and do we need to think about sort of how we coach those sessions? So as I said, that was kind of my observations, but I would really like to hear from you. So we're going to go into some breakout rooms. Hopefully Robbie is ready. And I'd like you to think about where you think the barriers are at the moment. So is it before your women and girls come to the coaching sessions? Is it at the coaching sessions? Or is it kind of the transition from your session to a race? And secondly, if we wanted to kind of review the focus on racing, what could or should we do instead, and how might that affect kind of participation rates and enjoyment and that sort of thing. So without further ado, I will hand over to Robbie to put you into breakout rooms.
Yes, so I will open the breakout room shortly. If you haven't done this before, you should see something pop up on your screen that just says join the room. Click that button, you'll be zoomed out and you'll be in a much smaller group to discuss what Julia's just been over there. If you get kicked out of the meeting, or you get kicked out, just click the meeting link again and we'll let you back in. But do stick with us. You'll have around about 12 minutes for this first conversation, and then we'll come back together and share our thoughts and findings. So have fun. So Matt, Chris, Sarah, hopefully something on your screen saying join room. Yeah. Yes, Nikki. Yeah, I'll have a go with that. So Chris, Ruth, you're welcome to unmute yourselves if you're having any issues. I don't think I can force you to go to the room. You should just have something in the middle of your screen that says join. Evening, everybody.
Hi.
Hiya.
Anne, good to see you again.
Hi, I'm you, Robbie.
I didn't know you were joining us. Do you have a little one now? I seem to remember. Did you?
Two and another one on the way. Yeah.
Another one. Oh, congratulations! Excellent.
Thanks. Yeah, you. I can't remember when we last met. It was
Plasma
night.
Plasma night. Yeah, Plasma night. Yeah. Anyway, that's by the by. Hello, Simon. Anna, good to meet you.
Hello. Hi.
Have you done any introductions yet?
No, we were just about to start to, and then you appeared as if by magic.
Sorry to ruin everything.
Right.
Yeah, no, carry on. Don't let me.
Well, I'll start one, shall I? So I'm Simon Edwards. I'm a coach up in Yorkshire. I coach for, probably about 4 different clubs on and off at various different locations. And I've done some sort of RSR work with cyclocross as well. So
fantastic. 4 different clubs. Wow.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say I wouldn't say I get bored easily, but I do like to. I find that a lot of people coach in different ways, and actually coaching with different groups, you pick up lots of different styles of coaching and how to, sort of put things across in a different way that you might not think of yourself, or if your club only coaches one way, then you kind of don't automatically think about trying other things sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
shall I go?
Go for it.
Go on then.
So I run the Like a Lassie project in Scotland with a couple of other people, and I support the girls squad in the Edinburgh Road Club youth race team. So we've got a massive number of 8 of girls, but it's actually one of the biggest clusters of girls in that age group in Scotland. So but we're kind of trying to work together to be a bit of a conduit between the communication between the girls and the coaches, and a lot of the coaches that they're working with are male, so they are quite often a bit quiet about saying how they feel about things. So we're trying to encourage them to feel more confident with that.
We'd love to come back to that. Sounds really interesting. Have some good insight. Anne.
I'm Anne. I'm wearing two hats. I work for Welsh Cycling as a development officer for North Wales region. I also coach for my local Go Ride club. I've got quite a healthy female section, but yeah, not many of them race. But that's just probably due to the fact that we are out in the sticks, geographic. Yeah, we're out on the Llŷn Peninsula, so yeah, but very keen to get more women and girls into racing anyway.
I'm really sorry, but can you tell me how to pronounce your name? I'd rather get it right.
You can call me Anne. I go by my middle name, so that's much easier for you. Yeah,
that's all I know you as. I always get that on your email signature, but I've never said that.
Yeah.
So, just off what Julia said, then, does that resonate with any of you?
Yeah, I mean, there certainly seems a different way that the girls I've coached have approached how they do stuff. And actually, what I found the most interesting, so for a year and a bit ago, I was coaching on RSR, and that was the first time I'd ever coached girls as a group on their own. And you could totally see how they think about things differently compared to the boys, because we were trying to get them to explore stuff. So we were giving them a bit of an idea of what we wanted them to do, but actually getting them to explore different ways of riding around the same sort of circuit. And the girls pretty much straight away started exploring new ways of doing it. Whereas the boys, you kind of got to tell them to go and try different stuff almost. So actually, they were really inquisitive on how to do stuff, but I guess you that might be a little bit more of the environment, because they were all girls and they were all happy to do it. Whereas in a mixed environment, I think what Julia was saying about the racing and not racing against the boys, sort of, you see that quite a lot, that they're less confident because they think, oh, the boys are just going to beat us or whatever,
Are you talking about, what age group are you talking about?
So for the people at the RSR were all sort of under 14s and under 16s. So, they were all quite competent cyclists. So I think that's potentially a bit different to our normal club environment, because the club environment's quite a broad spectrum. So depending on which group you're with, the groups that you tend to find at our club are sort of, I don't know, about 8 to 12 and sort of about 11 to 16. So, there's a bit of an overlap in age groups depending on how they're progressing as riders as well. But, certainly in the younger group, I always find they're quite keen. And as they get a little bit older, they sort of seem to hold back a little bit. Like, not necessarily there's a bigger difference between the boys and girls, because there isn't always. There's a lot of really good girls that can hold their own with the boys, but there's just that little bit of holding back. Whereas when they're younger, they're kind of all just mucking together, don't they? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'd say there's no difference at all in how, you wouldn't be able to pick out in our younger group at all. Girls and boys it's just a big stramash. It's absolutely fine. But yeah, what we're having to do now, and it's because numbers dwindle as well, is they start to feel like they're the only one there. They start to lose confidence and start to feel like it's a bit of a battle to hold their own when they're in their teens. So, that we, in our club, we've got a decent number, but there are clubs on the other side that have got 1s and 2s of girls, and we're trying to kind of coordinate so that the clusters, the girls are together, when they go to the regional clusters, we kind of coordinate to make sure they are little gangs of them there. And some of the coaches are starting to take on, when they're putting them in groups, because in that age group, like you say, the ones that stick at it are all decent riders. So it's not the kind of breadth of, the difference in skill isn't as broad as it is with the younger ones. So it kind of feels okay to put them together and coach them together, for the muddy ones anyway, where it's more skills and, but they just feel more comfortable with a friend there, and they don't have to make that effort to prove that girls are good. It's even that they say they find tiring, just having to be there and represent that girls are good is an extra bit of effort they have to put in that they don't always want to.
Is it? I find this really interesting. Really interesting. So, is there anything? I've only got a 1-year-old daughter, so she's a little way off being on a bike or competing at RSRs. But she, just what we read, what you see in the media about kind of the, the mental health challenges girls have, boys and girls really, with all the pressures of social media and things. Is that a fact? So, Simon, you talked about holding back, and is there a potential that there's any kind of social element about, people, obviously people become more and more aware of how they're being perceived when they're older, and potentially the link to what Anna said, just about starting to feel like the only one representing. Do you think that's a thing, or
I'm not sure. I'm not sure it's to do with sort of the image as such. I think there's a feeling that maybe some of the, if you got a few older boys, that they tend to be, I'm trying not to say boisterous, but I'm trying not, I can't think of another word, but they get in with their elbows a bit more, and some of the girls don't really want to be in the middle of all of that, but they could probably quite easily hold their own, and certainly technical ability and speed wise, there's nothing to say that they wouldn't be able to sort of be in that group quite happily, but they're not as happy being in the middle of that sort of environment, I think, where there's a lot of it, when you're jostling for positions, certainly some of the sort of older, bigger boys tend to use their weight a little bit, don't they? Whereas the girls potentially are more like, say, the under 14s rather than the under 16s, comparing the weight. So they haven't got that sort of exertion behind it to push the way through, I guess. And I think maybe that's what they're backing away from a little bit, rather than them not feeling that they're good enough. Maybe, I don't, it does. Certainly the girls that I've coached, they don't come across as thinking they're not good enough.
You coming in, Anna? Anna, are you coming in? Sorry, I thought you were going to speak.
Sorry. No, absolutely. I think they have a lot of confidence in their ability, but sometimes I think they feel a little. I've certainly witnessed language that has been used that the girls kind of feel they have to be stronger than they always want to be about saying, hang on a minute, I've got every right to be here. We've had to certainly pull up some of the boys for just, I'm not trying to criticize the boys at all. I just think that sometimes the girls feel safer if they're in numbers, and it dwindles in the teens, so they're more likely to end up in the position where they're representing the girls. And
so how would we take this knowledge? But bear in mind, and you said before about the dropout, the numbers are dwindling. So then, kind of that racing and those being involved in the coach session in a group becomes more challenging if you're not involving everybody that's there at the session. So there isn't enough girls to do those activities. So what would you say, based on the challenge that Julia's observed, how do we take kind of the conversation so far and apply it to make sure it's more girls, more girls stick with it, and B, that there's a right opportunity for them to feel that they don't have to always step up, and they can just be in the group and enjoy the racing and the challenge?
You mentioned lots about girls and boys in the same session there. Do you ever run separate sessions where it's just the girls, Simon?
So in our club, no. It's tricky, I think, as they get a bit older, because there's not as many girls that we find continue, and whether that's because we're a bit more orientated in the older groups as kind of a race session, and maybe that puts them off, I don't know. This is something that I've been talking to a few other coaches about, because I would say in the younger groups it's probably a good 50-50 split. So certainly under 10, I would say you'd be hard pushed to say that there's more boys than girls, or vice versa. But as they get into that older group, you tend to find there's less of them want to continue to do that session. Now, I don't know whether that's because it's maybe more of a racing session, or whether they just get a bit bored going around the same circuit over and over and over, and they just want to go and do other stuff, you know, and explore outside that, where there's the boys, maybe they're just as happy going around in circles. I personally find it quite boring going around the circuit for hours and hours on end, but a lot of the kids seem to have hours of fun just doing the same thing week in, week out, you know. So, well, you know, maybe there's an element of that, and an element of not wanting to race, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I suppose with the older groups, I find it happens in our club, you tend to focus on the fitness elements and that racing focus, and with the younger groups it's more fun based. So maybe that's what girls start dropping out. It gets a bit too competitive and the focus shifts.
Yeah, our go ride kind of, there's a perception that it kind of ends as you go to secondary school, and then there's nothing except the race team really after that, and it all gets very serious. And I think that's a problem for everybody, actually.
Although interestingly, if you actually look at the girls that we have got in the club that continue from the sort of age of 12 upwards, I'm trying to think of the sort of split in numbers, but I would say there's only actually 2 of them that race, and there's about another 3 or 4 that are good and could race, but for whatever reason don't. I don't know whether that's because they don't want to, or perhaps the parents can't get them to the races or whatever. But you know, you don't seem to see them very much at the races, but they're still continuing in that sort of race-like session, I guess. So you know, it's not putting everybody off, but also it's not maybe focused in a broad enough area to include everybody either, I guess.
Then there is a failure on our part as British cycling as well, just talking about, you know, kind of that fun and the missing the missing pathway. And it's something, being honest, we have been aware of, you know, for a while. It's coming through. I'm not sure if anybody was involved in the discipline plans, where we're looking at how we can support all the disciplines and what we need to do. But certainly that young person's pathway to, you know, support them through and give them the opportunities. You know, having things like a skills award to keep them motivated, like education courses where they can come in from 14, so that, you know, you might just be able to get them to hang on for a couple of years, so they can add a string to their bow, as it were. But then also with the gears books, I'm not sure you remember the gears books from your coaching courses. That, you know, the lovely imagery, but we found with a lot of coaches from speaking to them that they kind of flick through the drills and then get to the end and then just go, oh, we'll go back to the start. And like you say, if it's the same stuff again and again, and there's no illumination about where they can go or all the different activities they could do, then it could very quickly become boring. But like you say, some kids will do it, they'll crack on, but not all will. What do you think are your solutions to that?
I mean, I always like the idea of trying to be as multidisciplined as you can, because that can bring the fun element in, that you're not just going to the circuit, you're going to somewhere where you can do cyclocross, or you can go to do some trail riding or a trail centre or whatever and do some mountain biking. And you know, that change of scenery just brings some element into it as well. But again, you know, you tend to find it's the same handful of people that will go and do all of those sorts of things, rather than the whole club, because not everybody's got the ability to disappear halfway around the county to try and find some new areas to ride and stuff like that. But you know, you can certainly introduce a lot more fun elements into a lot of the off-road stuff easier than you can with the road stuff.
Yeah, we've introduced like this is for youths in general, not just the girls, like an older youth club ride. So I'm just thinking girls might appreciate the social aspect of a club ride, just for them, with a few older role models, with a cafe stop, you know, just make it more than, so they get their fitness, and it's just something different to add to the programme as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think club rides are actually really useful. We don't seem to be able to get those up and running. You tend to find we'll try it a few times and we'll get 3 or 4. Yeah, and then for whatever reason, either there's holidays or the the coaches aren't available to ride or whatever, it stops, and then we never quite seem to manage to pick it up again. So it's another 6 months before we can do it again. So, you know, I think from a rider's viewpoint, it makes it more fun, doesn't it? Definitely.
Yeah.
It's just getting people to do it.
Yeah. Right. I think I'm going to have to. Well, we've got another minute, but I'm going to have to close the breakout rooms just to keep this ticking on. So it will just bump you out in an hour. You don't need to tick anything. You can leave the breakout room now if you want. But really interesting from my point of view. I think we kind of diverged in, you know, talking a little bit about racing and different age groups, but then also dropout as well. And I think that's a key thing, that if we're only focused on racing, we might encourage dropout, because if that's not all that they're interested in, and then it might flip around to that diverging our offer as a club to offer there's multiple disciplines, thinking about the club runs, just going and having fun on an off-road ride, going for an adventure. You know, will that keep with us? And when you're out on the ride, have that conversation about, why don't you do a cyclocross race? Or, you know, it doesn't have to be a circuit race, does it? That they do with, I don't know. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, we use cross a lot because it brings the roadies and the mountain bikers to one place.
Yeah, I love it.
Right. Don't need to go.
Is that? Yeah, brilliant. Robbie's back. I thought.
Yes, I thought I was never going to get let back in. I was like, oh, disaster! I've told you all about getting kicked out, and then it was me. Firstly, thank you to Simon, Anna, and Anne in Myra. Really good conversation. Probably could have carried on for a lot longer, and you are going to have an opportunity to go back into a breakout room with a different lineup to carry on the discussion. So let's firstly, if you've had any, you know, key themes, ideas, concerns, just a bit of an oversight into what was discussed in your room would be really valuable. But just keen to hear from our guests tonight. So should we go to Julia first? Were your observations echoed from people elsewhere in the country?
Yeah, they seem to be, especially around the kind of maybe marketing things to your audience rather than what the actual session is maybe sort of aimed at. So for example, we had an example of, rather than calling it a cyclocross racing coaching session, it was framed as sort of an off-road skills session. So instantly that was less off-putting to some of the women. I think one of the other key things that came out of it was the importance of having female role models, so female coaches, female ride leaders, all of that sort of thing. And the example that we had is that then increased participation.
We had the conversation just before we admitted everyone onto the call tonight, just about the influence of mums. Specifically talking about Tiffany's mum, level 3 coach, still rides a lot, still races, and there's actually quite a bit of research to support that. That if the mum of the family is on a bike, then the rest of the family is more likely to ride on a continuous basis. Big influences in the home. So maybe there's an argument for targeting the mums as well. And I'm not sure if Lloyd is on the call tonight. There's a great club in the central region called Sprockets, and they have a really high female membership. And they said their policy was just asking mums who are bringing the kids to the session, why don't you come join us on a club session? And they've got the mums there, and they've just seen their membership go through the roof. So really interesting, something possibly for you to explore as a club or coach. So Tiffany, what were your findings?
So we noticed that, well, speaking to the guys in my group, we noticed that there was in clubs a lot more at a younger age. There was the same male and female split, and then as they got to sort of 14 years old, if they weren't in sort of the top few in like competing, if they weren't sort of winning, they dropped out, and we weren't too sure why they were dropping out of it. And we just think because when you get to sort of that age, as being a teenager, a lot of things are happening as a female, so maybe they just wanted to figure that all out and then maybe come back to it at a later stage. We also noticed that cyclocross is a more of a relaxed environment, and that it was more inviting for people to start doing cyclocross if they hadn't raced before. Cyclocross was one of the main disciplines that they wanted to start in, which I thought was quite interesting, and it's sort of the relaxed approach, and everyone being really encouraging, through males and females being encouraging for people that have just started it, and then also having female only sessions was also a really good point, and it just made the women feel more comfortable being having that environment to be on their own. Basically, it made they had each other to support.
I wonder how many rooms similar was discussed, because you've echoed quite a few of the the themes that came from our room. Yeah, definitely about the ages, under 14 to under 16. Definitely touched on dropout. You know, looking at the dwindling numbers of girls, and I guess it comes back to that adage that, you know, people do things that they're good at, and they're good at things that they like to do. You know, so if you don't feel that, you know, you're good enough, or you're always bundled in, you know, the boys and girls together, and there's various, you know, genetic advantages that might be taking place, then, you know, you start to feel like it's not for you. I know, you know, I wonder if we'll come on to the tactics later about what we might be able to do, but I found that an interesting conversation. But yeah, definitely cyclocross was mentioned, and as was boredom. I'm not sure if this came up before, but, you know, kind of things about the, you know, the same circuit, the sessions maybe not being fun, and other things going on in the life maybe being a little bit more fun. Maybe that when we talk tactics, we can come back to that. Thank you, Tiffany. Helen.
Yeah, we talked a little bit more about sort of the differences between girls and boys in sort of these clubs and racing sort of situations, and we talked a lot about how girls, we are very much more measured. We like to have all of the information when we're learning skills or when we're racing, and with that brings confidence, and the confidence then to put ourselves out there into situations. But, you know, it's important that we, you know, get all of the information and we weigh everything up, whereas boys will just sort of throw themselves into any race, any hill, any jump, whatever, and don't worry about the consequences. We talked a little bit about girls on the velodrome, for example, when they're first having to go on the velodrome, and with boys feeling a little bit intimidated to ride with the boys, again for similar reasons. You know, they're a little bit more confident, and they mess about a little bit more, so separating boys and girls in certain situations as well. Or equally, Chris in my group talked about pairing girls and boys up, having, you know, that partnership, and so the boy understands how the girl wants to ride and race, and a teamwork element there. So it was really interesting. It wasn't long enough, to be honest, but yeah, we talked again a little bit about sort of that motivation, or how high the motivation is to succeed for girls, or how is the motivation to avoid failure stronger than the motivation to succeed with racing. So yeah, it was really interesting.
It's quite interesting, that last point, because I'm not coaching girls at the minute. I've coached girls in football before, and I've only got a 1-year-old daughter, so I'm not as familiar with this as you are now. But I did pose the question because I see it quite a lot in the media about the impact of social media and mental health during COVID as well. And I, you know, posed the question, and it was I just found it quite interesting that didn't see that that perception from the group was an issue. The girls that stick around and they're at 14, 16, that they're good and can hold their own, but they may be perceived that they're kind of fighting their, you know, their corner, and maybe want those opportunities to just be with their group, and you know, develop that way. I don't know if that's come up at all. Do keep, I'm seeing, you know, a few comments coming in, so do keep sharing your ideas. If you agree with some of the stuff that's been said, if you disagree, do let us know. But I'm going to hand over to Tiffany, who's going to give a little bit of insight to some areas of the talent pathway. So I'm just going to get my screen back on. Sorry, why is that not? There we go.
Perfect. Thanks. Yes, thanks, Robbie. So yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about my role as the talent development coach for the females, and what I've sort of noticed so far in my role and what's been happening within British cycling. So yeah, the purpose of my role is to increase the quality and quantity of female youth cycling talent. It's quite simple, but it's not always that easy. It was a new role that was developed in October, so I haven't been in it that long, but hopefully I can make some impact in the near future and get more of these barriers broken down. But some things that I noticed whilst doing these roles, there was sort of 3 main barriers to female participation in races. First one being gender imbalance. So first point there, so lack of media coverage in female sport. If you think about the Tour de France, it's a men's stage race, 3 weeks, and it's normally broadcast on sort of 2 channels. You get a live coverage throughout the whole day and you get the highlights in the evenings. Whereas the female version of the Tour de France is La Course, which is 1 day, and it was broadcast over 2 channels, but I don't know if anyone watched it. I watched it and they showed you a highlights version. So it was 1 hour and they basically cropped from the start. They showed you the start and then cropped it, showed you right at the end, and it was just flat finish. And there was about 6 of them in the finish, which looked really boring. But it was actually a really exciting race. They just missed out the best part of it. So I think it's showing the correct parts on the media coverage and showing that female racing is exciting, because then more and more people will want to watch it. There's also a lack of opportunity in female sport. When I was younger, we didn't have female only races. I think it's brilliant now that we do, but we didn't when I was younger. I used to have to race with the men, which is hard. Like, it is hard racing with the men. Especially at a younger age, it can be really demoralizing if you can't keep up and you get dropped straight away. That could be a reason why females don't really want to take part in sport, cycling in particular. So I think there's more and more opportunity at the moment, but there's still a massive gap. So we want to try and encourage more and more people to do that, and hopefully then improve the motivation of the riders, which then moves me on to motivation, the second barrier. I think females, this was something that was spoke about in my breakout group as well. Females tend to have a lower self-esteem. Naturally, they're a little bit less confident than males. So that's where we spoke about having those female-only sessions. But wearing lycra is not the most flattering outfit. It's not the most flattering choice of clothing. So wearing lycra might not necessarily be sort of that appealing for a lot of people. That could put them off and then put them off the sport. I also think there's a lack of relatable role models. So I know someone spoke about role models in one of their breakout groups, but I think in British cycling itself, there's hundreds of role models that you could choose, but I'd quite like it to be relatable. So for me particular, I work with youth riders, so sort of 14, 15, 16, and I'd quite like the juniors, so 17, 18-year-olds, to be more relatable for those riders and have a closer network so they can ask them questions and hopefully break down those barriers and get more, because you tend to get a lot of females drop out at the age of 16 or around that age. So hopefully we can make that a bit tighter. Also, a lack of encouragement is the final one for motivation. As a youth rider, it's pretty much impossible to do cycling at a high level if you don't have the encouragement from home. You can't drive, so you can't get yourself to these events. Also paying for race entries and things, it becomes crazy, and you can't do that without the support from home. So that is also a massive barrier. If you're not from a cycling household, it makes it incredibly hard for you then to get anywhere really in cycling. You need that support from home. Then moving on to the third barrier, which is social pressures. So your friends and peers might be inactive, something that we've just spoke about earlier. A lot of girls are inactive. There's a stat on the BBC that says boys by age 14 are twice as likely to be active than girls, which is quite shocking that girls are sort of twice as likely not to be taking part in sport at age 14, which is still quite young. So I think if your friends and peers are inactive, that could sort of put you off a little bit. And if your friends wanted to go meet your friends on an evening and you actually had to go train, you might be like, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go and be a child and still enjoy my youth and have fun with my friends. So yeah, that's also a bit of a barrier there. Also having a negative attitude towards PE. As it says, when I was in school, it was either rugby or netball. they were the only real sports, and if you didn't do those sports, you weren't classed as a sporty child, which I thought was crazy because I was really sporty, but my school didn't really notice it. So you might have sort of that negative mindset towards sport in general and maybe not want to take it up. And then we'll put other sports there. So things like TikTok. I don't know if any of you know what TikTok is, but it is trending at the moment. It's like an app on your phone and you can do dances and things. So that's huge, and it's making a lot of people want to get into dance, which is making dance a really popular sport. So yeah, hopefully we can sort of channel that and get more people into cycling somehow. So then we're going to move on to what British Cycling have done so far. So what we've done so far as British Cycling. I've put some points down on the left of what they've done, and then they sort of match the barriers on the right, and sort of help them defeat those barriers in essence. So female only RSR sessions, which is our regional school of racing. We set that up a couple of years ago, and I think it's made a really massive network for the females. The fact they can all be together, it gives them the opportunity, that safe space that we spoke about, makes them more confident, and hopefully it gets that friendship and people there that they can talk to and maybe go on rides with at a later date and train with. We've got 43 development centres across the country, and that just makes such an opportunity for riders. They don't have to travel all across the country to get to a local development centre. They can train somewhere local to them, which I think is a lot better for the parents. They're not having to travel as far, but it's giving the riders that opportunity as well. We've got female coaches and networks, and for me, being a female coach, I know I've got no problem with coaching with males, but I much prefer coaching with females because it's that sort of safe space, and you can share best practice and share things that you might have faced as a female. Hopefully then it's also a little bit of a role model for the riders to look at. British Cycling have identified the problem with me. They've given me a role to hopefully tackle this problem that they've got, and they've noticed that there is a lack in females. So that's a great thing, and like I mentioned earlier, I hope I can be a good role model for these riders and sort of a safe space. If they do have any questions, they can come to me with those. And then better calendar planning. So we try and plan as best we can our sessions not to clash with any others, because I know how important it is for people to put on women only and girls only events. So we don't want to clash with them, because we want to give them the opportunity, and that's sort of creating that chance there. We don't want to ruin it and then make it so that there's less entrance into races and things. So then we'll move on to what I hope to achieve. Like I said, it is a new role. I've been in it since October, but I have got a couple ideas of things that I'm hoping to sort of get out and running soon. The first one being social media. I know youngsters, they're glued to their phones. So why not use what's in their hands as a network that we can sort of get their attention? So they love social media. They're always scrolling through Instagram and things. So why not use that? Use influencers. Could talk about things like nutrition, their goals, sort of training, and make it relatable for them. Something that I've noticed since doing my role is a lot of things that guys don't really notice. So for example, jersey pockets. Women tend to be a smaller frame. So my jersey, well, I'm tiny to be fair, but my jerseys have only got 2 pockets. So it's a case of fitting things into them and knowing how you can put things in. Because I went on a ride with some girls and they said, oh no, I didn't bring my waterproof because I haven't got space for it in my pocket. And it's not a case of you don't bring it, because you might need it. But it's just having someone there that can explain those things. And it is sort of things that I know I spoke about it with the people from the talent team, and they didn't realize that was a problem, but you don't realize until you're in that situation yourself. So it's just making it more relatable for the riders. Another thing is jumping on the back of local campaigns. So I know This Girl Can is a massive campaign for females, and hopefully we can jump on the back of that with cycling, and maybe riders would see it on TV. They'd see a This Girl Can campaign and think, oh yeah, I want to take part in cycling. That would hopefully give them better media coverage, which is one of the barriers. And it's giving them a positive attitude towards sport and cycling itself. Then for sort of facilitating what I like to call a buddy system, so a bit of a question and answer with the junior girls, maybe every couple of months, just do a question and answer with the youth riders and the juniors, so they can a little bit more relatable, and they've got that connection there. So anything they might want to ask, they've got that space, that safe space there to ask those questions, and that's where your role models come in. If they can be really close, they can be close together and ask any questions they might have. Then moving on to organising regional club runs. This is something that I'm really passionate about, and hopefully something that we can get off the mark pretty soon, because I think this has got massive benefits to it. It will be female only club rides close to where you live, so you don't have to travel too far. But the benefits of doing a club ride are massive for these youth riders, and I don't think a lot of them do it. But also that space where it's all females, they can talk to each other, they can enjoy their time riding and training without really realizing. But then also they could go away and meet up with that person to do a specific set that they might have another time, and it just gives them that more friendly environment. Also, I think a lot of riders at sort of 14 years old, girls especially, aren't allowed on the roads on their own. Their parents won't let them. So to be able to do a ride where we all go together and sort of it's facilitated by British Cycling, that will give the parents hopefully more confidence in that as well. And then we also have each year 4 circuit and 5 track female only RSRs, which is that opportunity really for females to take part. It's building their confidence, and it's getting that safe space. Their friends are involved with them. We've also got what we call a talent transfer happening at the moment. So we've got riders who are coming from BMX, and they're quite high up in BMX, and they might be transitioning over to track because they're quite similar. So once you're in the British cycling pathway, it's not sort of a dead end. There's lots of different ways to go, and we do sort of talent transfers over from different riders from different disciplines as well. So yeah, if we just to on the next slide, if you just look at the graph that we've got on the right, it's quite interesting. If you look at the red line, that's the female members across the different regions. And if you look at the blue, it's the males. The grey is total, and it's a massive difference. So hopefully we will be able to get that line similar to each other. That's the plan anyway. And just a couple figures on that, there's about 1,000 youth females that have a membership, British Cycling membership, but only 500 of them race. So it's quite shocking that only half of them actually have a race license and race. And hopefully that's something that we can sort of change in the future. So all in all, really, the 3 things that I sort of want to focus on: I want to improve the gender imbalance, get more females into it, racing and just into cycling in general. I want to, like I've just said, improve the number of young people racing, get them more on their bikes, but also into the racing environment. And I also want to know what you can do. So you guys most of you are coaches, some of you are parents, and you've probably got some great ideas. So I'm looking forward to getting into some breakout groups with you and finding out what from your perspective you think these barriers are and how we can get rid of them. I've just told you loads of things that I want to do, but that's just from me. So I'm hoping you've got some great ideas as well. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tiffany. Really, really enjoyed that. I'm sure many people did. You certainly seem to generate a lot of discussion, which is really, really interesting to see. So definitely do have a look at the chat. Just to pose, actually, let's go into the breakout room and allow people to discuss it. So you're going to go into different groups of 4. We barely touched surface in 12 minutes last time, so let's go for at least 15 minutes and see how the conversation's evolving. And like Tiffany said, this is about what can you do based on what Tiffany said, or what are your ideas for the future. Loads of them coming through for the chat. This is about getting some tactics and things to go away with. So I will open the breakout rooms and send you off. Do remember to come back, and I hope you enjoy yourselves.
No worries. Hi, Robbie.
Good evening, all. How are we doing? I was in a breakout with you last time, Sue, wasn't I?
Not
Was
this
I?
section. One section. Yeah.
Yeah. Good to see you again. Good to see you
Yeah,
back here. Who wants to kick off? What do we think?
So many things.
I'm quite happy to make a start. We've started a group up in Scotland that we've called Like a Lassie. And one of the other group members is here tonight, Anna Dericourt, as well. And basically we had, I coach in Deeside Thistle up near Aberdeen, and she was involved with her daughter riding down in Edinburgh. And it so happens that both of these clubs have got quite a lot of females, but lots of other clubs just have one or two. So we're finding there was a point where the riders race and they do quite well in youth. And then as they get to the final years of youth, if they don't get on to race national programmes, which is like the RSRs that we have up in Scotland, if they don't get on to this national, these training sessions like RSRs, they fall away because they feel that they're not that like. So actually, there's very few that, you know, that I say there's a few that will get on, but there's also only a few that fall away. So they feel quite kind of isolated. So what we decided to do is to try and get together to keep some of them in it and give them sessions that weren't the national sessions, so that just because you didn't make national standard to get to all these training sessions and educational things as well, we'll try and provide that for them. So we started just before lockdown. We had our first trial day before lockdown. We had a great day. We started off with a game of dodgeball. We did no cycling deliberately because we didn't want this ranking, this kind of peer pressure. If you go out on a ride first thing, and somebody's going to have a hard time, and they're already then on the back foot for the whole of the day. They're looking at the floor and stuff. So we avoided the cycling. We started with dodgeball champions. So everybody got mucked in. We did lots of team stuff, blindfolded, where they had to help each other run up to get the ball. So actually it made a good team spirit. Then we had we did some yoga, we did some Pilates, we did stretching. And then we had at Edinburgh, facilities at Edinburgh University. We went in and did a cookery class, which was fantastic. So the girls were in teams and they made meals and snacks that were balanced and appropriate for their activity levels under the guidance of the dietitians and nutritionists there. And that then served as lunch. So we had Katie Archibald come in the afternoon. So she had lunch. So this is like a week before lockdown for COVID. Katie Archibald was eating lunch cooked by the girls. So that in itself just was brilliant. And then we had a couple of chats on fantastic, and all the girls, there was no bitchiness, no gripes or anything. They all got on really well. This was all over Scotland. And we've continued, so we went into lockdown, but we've done a weekly stretching session on Zoom, and we're getting 18, 20 plus girls there, secondary age. So really we've said secondary age so that they can kind of engage with it. And it's brilliant. It's working really well. We just want to get back to do things together. But maybe lockdown's been good because there's been no cycling together as a group, and we're all quite equal, and they all get on well, and they do their stretching and then they have a chat. So we're hopeful to keep this going so that there's a big social element. That's the key thing.
I find that fascinating. I really enjoy. You know, I just think it then isn't about the bike, is it? The bike is just the conduit for how they met and how they continue to meet, and it's kind of based around the club, but they do other stuff. It's a social element, and then builds that community, so they feel, you know, potentially less threatened if a racing scenario is presented. Really, and I wonder if that's a sales, you know, kind of a sales pitch, and kind of about how we sell cycling as well. Like, we, you know, is it about the adventure, the utility, the freedom, everything like that, or are we just too focused on racing and competition and things like that? I do keep on asking this question because
And
I think
the
it's quite
good thing was, we had top riders. I don't know if you know the name, Emily Carrick-Anderson, top cross rider. She was there and she was mixing with youngsters that are, just 12 years old, 13, and just starting riding and racing. So, and there was no preconceived ideas that, they're the champions, so we can't mix with them.
I love this. Absolutely love it. You tell Helen Scott about that. She'll be like, right, how do we set it up in?
It's been
anybody
good.
else?
We had Hannah Miley last night from swimming chatting to us, and that was good. So it's great. No, it's good. Happy to share.
Yeah, brilliant. Yes, no, let's pick that up, Sarah. That'd be great. Does anybody else want to share your thoughts?
Some of the stuff that I do, mountain bike coaching in the Forest of Dean, and we've been doing sort of mixed coaching with it's the Little Fodders is the club that we do, from 5 to 12 years old, mixture of boys and girls, and we're doing that a couple of years now, and we've got a few girls in the groups, but they approach it very differently, the boys. In the last session, when someone was saying like the boys just throw themselves down anything, they will just attack anything, they don't think about the consequences, they're just boys and they just do it, whereas the girls are a bit more calculated, a bit more sensible about things, they weigh the risks up a bit more cautious. And I've got 2 girls myself that come and do the coaching, and they might do 3 sessions of a bit of trail. The boys have done 10. They're just constantly going around, but the girls are having a chat at the same time. So we were chatting to the other parents and things, and we managed to get to a point where we were like, well, let's do a girls only session, which is just for the girls. And it's a very different session to the mixed sessions, because when you're coaching just the girls, it does become a bit more about the social side of it as well. It's not just about the bike riding. They get really excited about meeting their mates and going out with them, and we're doing some mountain biking as well. Whereas when they're mixed in with the boys, it's often they're almost tagging along with the boys and just keeping up, and then kind of we do our best not to let them be sidelined, but the boys are pushy, they want to do more, they want to get on with it, whereas the girls are a little bit more reluctant. But when they're all together, they absolutely love it. And like Sarah was saying, it's getting them together and having the bike as that thing that is the common denominator is really good, and they really, really enjoy that. And we get a lot, the numbers are going up, well, up until lockdown, the numbers were going up and up with the girls session, and it's proving really popular with all age groups. And we've got girls from 5 up to
would never
who would never have done it if they were doing it with the boys, because the boys put them off. And the boys just being boys, if a girl is not quite as fast as them, they take the mick out of them. And as coaches, we sort of sort that out, but you can't stop everything.
Yeah.
And you don't want that to be what puts them off. But when they're riding as a girl group, they encourage each other because they're not worried about what the boys are going to say to them. And I think that's a really, really important thing for the girls, isn't it?
Yeah, because there's some there that are kind of only for the girls.
Yeah, because we get a lot that only. So my wife's sat next to me. We get some that will only come to the girls' sessions. They won't do the mixed ones because they've had a bad experience in there before.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that will be off, but it's amazing how consistent this is. I was talking. Sarah mentioned Anna from Like a Lassie before, and I was in the room with Anna before, and she said, "Yeah, that's the observations that they've had." What about? Thank you for that, Ross. Elizabeth or Sue?
Yeah, I thought about the Tiffany's point about having influencers talking about nutrition and training, and I think there's also to be done at a club level, because especially with puberty, girls' bodies change, and even with women, like our bodies change every month in different ways, and we obviously can't train in the same way each and every day of the month. And there's a little knowledge on that. There's a little knowledge within the coaches. Well, with the coaches don't know about it. The riders don't know about it. And we keep training the same as the boys, which may not be ideal. And we keep eating the same as the boys as young teenagers probably, but it may not be ideal. And that's probably one of the things. If a girl is being pushed to train hard when she physically should be training less hard, that might be a put off without even knowing that we're doing it.
It's really interesting. So what do you think the solution is? It for, say, British cycling to have more content on the relative?
Yeah,
I guess
probably, or maybe like an additional workshop that coaches could take just to inform riders, or just as a coach learn what to say to the riders.
I think it needs to become an open conversation throughout. I think they need to know that it's a coach to rider. Any coach to rider needs to become a comfortable conversation, because if a girl's struggling because she's got stomach cramps, I know when I was younger, I was more of a swimmer when I first started my period. I used to get really, really bad aches in my thighs, but I couldn't tell my coach that. If I turned up to swimming training with my period anyway, is a completely different thing. But having the open conversation with the coach, so that but this is a whole thing as well that needs to be an open conversation for everybody about that. But yeah, just having the relationships between the coaches so they just feel trusting about it. But also, just as we're talking about female physiology at the moment, sports bras as well, mountain bike, cyclocross, those girls that have bigger breasts sooner may not understand the importance of having the correct sports bra on, and might not want to take part in some things because they don't feel supported as well. So that there are other things as well that for some females that would knock their confidence. They may not turn up to things. I've had an instance when I've had a conversation with a region about the race speed suits that they had, skin suits that they had. They didn't have any female ones. They were unisex ones. They couldn't understand why they needed to have female specific ones. And the girls were like, we'll wear them, but we look like shit in these. So, they weren't feeling good. They were feeling aware of how they looked before they even started the race. So just, things like that.
Really, really, really interesting points. And I think it comes back to that open conversation. I wonder how many coaches here tonight and trained coaches that we've got overall will be comfortable having that conversation. I don't know if there's a taboo around talking about some of these things, and both ways, from a coach to a teenage girl. But we need to be better at supporting that and enabling those conversations and really encouraging it.
But they only have to be like small things, like, when you're standing there welcoming them onto the track of the evening, the girl is confident enough to say to the coach, male or female, that, struggling a bit of PMS today. Okay, cool. Right, that's in my head. I won't, have a go if you're dropping off the back or whatever reason that may come up during training. Just an understanding.
Yeah. So the other thing as well is coaches being able to have conversations with parents, so that parents understand that those issues that are there, and to be able to, because as parents probably be more aware of what's going on. If they can have a bit more information themselves, they can help.
Yeah, great ideas. So I'm just mindful of time. It probably will allow another 5 minutes, because again, I'm feeling like we've only just scratched the surface, really. What would be your key takeaways if you're going to take something back to your coaching practice or to your club from tonight? What is it? What do you think is there something that you could go and do? Thinking easy wins, quick wins, and then maybe some things that will be like maybe some slow burners.
I mean, unfortunately, I'm not connected to a club at the moment because I've moved up to Yorkshire recently, and due to COVID, it's been quite hard.
Right. Yes. Okay. No problem at all. But maybe bank some things for later.
To get into stuff, but definitely club runs, female club runs.
It's a great idea, that, isn't it? And actually, it was in York. Are you anywhere near York?
Yeah, not far. Huddersfield.
I'm trying to do there was a coach who was working at 4 clubs, and he said he struggled with girls in the club run, and it would kind of tail off. But I don't know if he'd considered like putting them all together. So that could be, you know, really easy win.
I also like the idea of Ladies' Day. I don't remember who said it in the previous breakout group, but is a day where female coaches coach girls and mums.
Yeah, absolutely. Get everyone down, do it together, and that's a great idea. I'm just gonna carry on chatting. I'm just gonna pop a message out to everybody.
Yeah, because I think with races as well, race organisers are missing something, because you've got the parents, more than likely the mums, still on the sideline because they've brought their child to come racing. Why don't you just have a mums race? Well, encourage the mums to race. Sorry.
Yeah, we've had that issue. We've worked really hard in South Wales with the cyclocross to get a women's race where we separate, because previously the women would race with the youth and the under 6 juniors, and that put a lot of people off, because you had those really aggressive 16-year-old boys overtaking, barging people out of the way, and that, as spectators, people saw that, and as riders they experienced it, and then they didn't want to ride again. So because we really wanted to encourage the mums and the female participation to try and avoid that drop off, we managed to get a separate women's race, which not only was separate from the other categories, but ran in a way that if you had as long as you had 2 parents, you had childcare as well. Because often in mountain biking, for example, if you're entering the fun race, men and women are at the same time. So if you've got kids that are doing the kids racing, then you have to have one or the other is going to race in, or you have to choose different things. So I would often race in the vet 40s so that my wife can race in the fun. So there's always one of us available to look after the kids. But not everyone has that opportunity. So it's about looking at how the race day is organised as well, if we're trying to encourage people to come in and do that.
Yeah.
We also looked at, we had lots of great plans that COVID kind of killed around some of our elite riders, elite females offering sessions before the race days of taking new female racers around the course, showing them how it works, telling them, well, on a race day, this is what you're going to do. You're going to get your number. This is how it grids. This is the kind of terrain you're going to do, and trying to just make it a bit easier for people to come in and experience the racing, because often they only see what the kids do and then they leave because they don't hang around for another race. So just the thought of then entering a race is often quite off-putting. So we had lots of plans there specifically to try and address this issue of lack of female racing.
Yeah, that's come up on the discipline plans, actually. So I think I mentioned it on the chat before. I don't know if anybody's aware of it, but we're looking at plans for to support all disciplines. And it's not just for the first time I've seen it where we're talking about a discipline and we're actually talking about recreation programs. It's about, kind of the link from breeze to mountain bike, rides and races and those kind of things. What do you do to make it appealing, so it's just another opportunity rather than saying you have to race and it's going to be super competitive? Just go try it out, just test yourself, have it to work towards, kind of like sporty. But that's not just for women, but for men and women, just to try and make people dabble in the sport a little bit more, that kind of thing. So I think that's a great idea. A couple of minutes left. Does anybody want to Sarah, did you have any?
I was just going to say, we've had a few events where there's been a coaching session for the mums before the races. So before the races start, they get a coaching session, and then they have the option to race later on if they want to. Some of them do, some of them don't. Some just go for the coaching session. Similarly, on Saturday there, we had a mountain biking session for the girls, and one of the coaches then took the mums at the same time off to another bit of the woods, which worked well as well. And they had great fun doing very basic stuff compared to what the girls were doing, but the girls are quite good at what they're doing. So that was good. And it was pouring with rain and they all came back smiling, so it was good.
Sounds great. So I'm just going to close the room. So we've got a minute until we need to rejoin. So just firstly, thank you. I think there's some great ideas. Obviously, some really conscientious coaches on the call tonight. So we're going to dive back in a bit more of a group discussion. Hear from hear from the other rooms. Sarah, would you mind if I invited you in to speak to the rest of the group just about Like a Lassie? Because I think I've been in a room now with yourself and Anna, so I'm quite lucky in that I've kind of grown a little bit of awareness. But I think it just sounds like a superb initiative.
Yeah.
Is it self-funded? Is it through Scottish Cycling? How do you keep that going? Or maybe you might not have time to answer.
Yeah,
this,
we've just started it, and minute. So it's sitting parallel with Scottish Cycling at the minute, rather than being part of their programme. But I think they're quite interested.
Hello, welcome back, everybody. Sorry if that was a little bit abrupt. I'm always conscientious of saying like our conversation's going on, but I've absolutely no idea what's going on in anybody else's conversations. But I hope you found that of use. So let's have a little we'll have a little whip around the grounds, as it were. I'd first like to bring in Sarah Lowe and Anna. Can't see on the screen, Anna, because I've been in two breakout rooms now, and been really interested to hear about a project called Like a Lassie in Scotland, and I thought it would just be worth for anybody who hasn't been in a breakout room with Sarah or Anna just to hear a little bit about it. So, Sarah, Anna, if you'd like to unmute and just tell us a little bit about Like a Lassie.
Shall I fire away then? It was a bit of a combination with Anna and myself. We had a chat at a very cool cyclocross race in Mull, and we're talking about the girls in the club, and that was Edinburgh Road Club for Anna and Deeside Thistle for us, so we're up near Aberdeen. And we have quite a few girls, which is great, and Edinburgh had quite a few girls as well. And a lot of other girls are kind of scattered around the other clubs in the country, in Scotland, you know, one here, two there, whatever. So we had the majority, and we were talking about there being a little bit of a concern that as the girls progress through their cycling, they do quite well all the way through, and as they get to what I think would be the equivalent of your RSR sessions, ours called national training sessions, if you're not good enough, you don't get invited on them. And that can feel like end of, I think, for a lot of riders. So friends go off to it, but some riders don't get. And we started to realise that, you know, we might lose them. So we got together to think about what we could do, and we realised that the social aspect was the key thing. That was the answer to keeping them involved. So we got together and planned a day. I mean, Anna did most of the planning, and I just used a wee bit of my experience with coaching riders and also from cycling myself. So we've put together a day which just sneaked in before lockdown, and we had a day for Like a Lassie down near Edinburgh. And we started off, we had planned no cycling for the day, and that was absolutely key because we had newcomers, girls winning national championships, British championships as well. So we didn't want anybody to feel out. We thought if you go for a ride, somebody's going to be the weakest one that day or have a bad day, and then for the rest of the day they just look at the floor and the ball. Got everybody mixing in together, lots of giggles, and as far as we know, there was nobody that was a dodgeball champion, so that was key. Everybody was just there having fun. We paired them up. We did lots of blindfolded activities with people they didn't know. Great fun, real good giggle. Then we had a couple of talks. We then went, we had a couple of, I think we had a stretching session next, maybe it was, and Pilates and yoga, we had that. But the one that they really all enjoyed was before the lunch break, we went to the kitchens at Edinburgh University, and we had part of nutrition, and they made a full meal. So they made the starters, they made snacks, they made the full lunch. So they worked in groups doing that. They got advice on what you might want to add this for and what benefits that's got for you at that stage of training. So it was really, really pertinent for that age group too. Then we went off and had lunch. So they served up lunch, which they'd cooked to everybody. including Katie Archibald, who had joined us for some question and answer session. So I love it that this was the week before we went into lockdown with COVID, and Katie Archibald's eating lunch that had been prepared by all of our girls. That was fantastic. So we all had lunch, very informal chat. They all mixed, all the clubs. There was no cliquiness. And then we had a couple of talks. We had one about female health and menstrual cycle. And then we looked at saddle issues. We ran and that was a bit for us because of COVID. However, we've kept it going with a Zoom session every week for stretching, and we have, what, Anna, about 18, 20 girls most weeks. And that's been fantastic, and they love it. They're all socialising at stretching, which, again, isn't competitive. So actually, they all feel quite equal. So it's been great,
Sarah,
really good.
Really, really great initiative, and you know, a lot of the conversation tonight is coming back to that social element, that togetherness, and I just really love the idea of kind of the meeting via, you know, through the bike, but the bike not being the only thing they do, and you know, they develop that community, and that might then you know, allay any concerns or fears they might have about when things become a little bit competitive, because maybe they feel a bit more supported in there. So, you know, I wonder if there's anything for anybody else to take away. You know, Tiffany, get all the, you know, talent development girls cooking for Helen Scott. I'm sure she'd love to come along and have a scran. Yeah. Brilliant. I just really wanted to share like a lassie, so look out for that. I thought there were some really great initiatives there. Right, Julia, I'm really keen to hear about your room, but let's bring somebody else in, so there's a different voice. Nominate somebody from your room to give the feedback.
Well, you gave him a mention earlier, but Lloyd's definitely got some good ideas on this. It'd be nice to hear from Lloyd.
Yeah, come in, Lloyd.
Okay, we had a very interesting chat. There were two triathlon coaches in the room, and it was the difference, because triathlon's got lots of girls and a very, very much higher proportion of girls, partly because they recruit mostly from the swimming pool, and there are more girls in the swimming pool in their 8, 9, 10 than there are boys who tend to do swimming and then stop and then go off and play football. So they get a better proportion in, and then they manage to keep them. So that was one insight. We did come back to the socialization and the fun, and we did come back to the thing, it really doesn't matter how well we're doing with our races if we haven't got enough girls to start with. We've got to do something about having more at the beginning and then keeping more of them. So big chat about the difference between triathlon and how much better off they are, in the sense that they have more girls to start with, and they have more adult female, higher proportion of adult female racers than we do. So it can be done, but it does seem to be related to how many you start off with.
Lloyd, I mentioned your club before, you know, and you just go and asking and people actually going out and do that recruitment, like you say. So triathlon recruits from swimming, and I wonder if there's something there with triathlon. People have mentioned about the fun and the boredom and, you know, other things taken into account. I wonder if triathlon benefits as well, because there's 3 things to do rather than 1. I don't know, making some assumptions there, but Lloyd, do you want to share your just what you do as a club to have such a high female, and remind me of the stats, such a high female membership?
40 to 45% female in the club, and we're youth only, so we don't have any adults, and because we started afresh, we don't suffer from having to do the things that the grey-haired old blokes like me wanted to do, because we set up deliberately for kids, and we set out right from the beginning to have as near 50% as we could. We do that by just going and asking girls. So I work as a bikeability instructor in local schools, and if I see a likely person, I ask them what they do on a Saturday morning. The boys are nearly all playing football, the ones who are the likely ones. So I don't recruit very many boys from that way. The boys just turn up. But I do recruit quite a number of girls by just going up and saying, you know, you could do this. We also have 40 to 45% of our coaches are female, and that's lots of level 2s. And we make sure they lead the sessions, and they are seen as the leaders, so the boss coach of the day, organising and things. Occasionally, we'll have a females only session, so coached by females for the females, and we will invite the mums from time to time to do skills things. So we have set out to be equal. I don't think it's rocket science. We just go and ask them. So every time a mum looks likely, we say, have you thought of coaching? And I keep asking them. And if that doesn't work, I set one of the female coaches on them.
It's just really interesting, the email that you sent me about your approach as a club, of it circulated to the relevant powers that will be in British cycling. I think there's certain, I think everyone's looked at that and gone, probably overthinking some things. Maybe not some other things, but certainly that you just go and ask people, I think is great. So well done. I'm really interested to hear you say, so the Girls Women's Only Day came up on our call as well, thinking about having a mum's race and those entry level kind of fun competitions, making sure that race days are structured that enable, say, if a mum and dad have got childcare duties, that they can both have an opportunity to race, which I think is really important. So thank you, Lloyd. Tiffany, can you nominate someone from your room?
Yeah, we had very similar chats, but I'm going to nominate Anna because, sorry if she didn't want to be picked, because she told us a lot about the what Sarah spoke about earlier, which was really interesting.
Come in, Anna.
Okay. I'm just trying to think not to repeat what Sarah said. I suppose the thing that I found interesting and what we were talking about was this idea that when we got our girls together, we looked for support and information, we found an awful lot of how to get women into cycling, how to get girls to start cycling. And actually what we felt, we were starting from a point of how do we keep these girls in cycling? Because they're all 13 to 16 and the numbers are dwindling rapidly. And we wanted to ask them why they thought that was and what we could do to support them to stay if they wanted to stay. And part of that is feeling part of something, which is why we set up the network as we have. But it's about creating a place that once that community is strong and good, and it becomes something that other girls want to join, rather than trying to create a community and bring lots of people together and then create a community. So I think we're kind of going at it from that side. And the new girls who have kind of become old enough and joined in, it's a really, really strong group. And I think they were quite excited to be allowed to get involved in it. So I think that approach has been quite a good one.
Yeah. Brilliant, thank you. And I'm really, really mindful of time. We're obviously at an hour and a half now. I can't believe that the time seems to have absolutely flown tonight, but I'm really enjoying the conversation. So I'm going to hang around. If anybody does need to go, no problem at all. Thank you for attending tonight. Helen, could you nominate somebody from your room? You're on mute, Helen.
Sorry.
You're right.
Right, is Joanne still? Yes, Joanne's here. Joanne was great because she talked about how she dropped out of cycling at the age of 16. So I thought that was quite interesting. She's like prime person to discuss why. And yeah, and now she is at a college, did you say, Joanne? And
yeah, working at a college, yeah. So yeah, so I was hoping you wouldn't pick me. I was there.
Sorry.
That's right. Yeah, so we talked about a few things, but I suppose I was one of those people who I dropped out at 16, and I mean, both my parents are cyclists and I've grown up cycling, so I'm probably an odd person to have dropped out. But I then basically I was just like, well, there's other things to be doing, there's GCSEs and all this sort of stuff, and it's kind of, there's things that everyone has already said. We've spoken about how there's other things and teen pressures, and this was 15 years ago, and I wasn't on Facebook, I didn't have, it didn't exist, so it wasn't even that. And now there's even more social pressures on those kind of that age group. And what we basically talked a lot about the social aspect of it. Like, there's a lot of a lot of them, you know, you see, like, you know, there's always that thing that girls go to the toilet together. That's what I said in the group. But it is true, like, they like to do things together. So having that social aspect, you know, I said things like the cyclocross, which we've spoken about, is quite kind of popular. You know, there's often with kind of with parents as well, because you're kind of there the whole day. If your kids are doing it, there's always like some crash of kids that someone's been lumped with all of everyone else's kids to look after. But, you know, it means that there's always people there. There's kind of other people. If you've got that community aspect, it makes it a lot easier for you to do stuff. Yeah, I think that's kind of it. I could waffle about this topic all day, so I'll shut up now.
No, that's great. That's great. Just a little nuggets of insight I think I'm sure people are really valuing, which is great. So from my room, if I can, I'm not sure if she's still here, not on my first screen. Can I bring in Elizabetta? You had she gone? I can't tell. Oh, you're there. Sorry. Hello. Come in.
Yes. So I was thinking about the point that Tiffany made about having influencers talking about nutrition training. I also think that these things should be at a club level. So when girls hit puberty, the training and the nutrition should be very different from the boys, because women have our body changes in the course of a month. It changes completely from the first day to the last day, and we should be training differently. We should be training harder or less harder depending on the time of the month, and we should think about nutrition depending on the time of the month. And I think there are not many, as women, we don't know about it. So teenagers who just hit puberty definitely don't know about it. Male coaches are even less likely to know about it. So there needs to be some sort of more understanding on this. And as I don't remember her name in my group was saying, there needs to be a comfortable conversation between coach and rider about this sort of topics. That's it.
That was great, thank you. No, I thought it was really interesting because obviously I'm in the education team, British Cycling, and we're talking about an education element that actually, yeah, I don't think across many of our courses we we talk about coaching women and girls and supporting people into it. And we talk about children and inclusive cycling in terms of disabilities, but we don't talk about women and girls. And from what Elizabetta and I think it was Sue on the call said, there's they really need to create those environments to have those open conversations, so the girls feel confident to talk about it, but also the coaches too, whatever level. Really, really, really useful. And I will say, I'm going to hand over to Julia shortly, but there is a free course with Loughborough University about the coach-athlete relationship. So I'm not sure if you're aware, Dr. Sophia Jowett, she's like the guru, the grandmother of the coach-athlete relationship based at Loughborough, and there is actually a free course. Now, I haven't done it, but I noticed that I saw it posted on social media the other day. Probably worth a look. She knows she knows her stuff, and maybe there's some stuff in there that will help with that. So Julia, you posed the question to us at the start. What have you learned tonight, and what will be your takeaways?
Goodness, that's so difficult to sum up. There have been so many interesting conversations, and I think there's so much information that we already know, but I think there's definitely I think there's a really long journey that we can go on, that we can sort of really progress, and it's really exciting to have roles like Tiffany's, who focus solely on, well, not solely on women and girls, but with a focus, and I think absolutely if we can incorporate some of this in our education, because it's something that as coaches we really need to know more about, and especially with the types of groups that we work with, as Elizabetta said, if we don't know about it, then those teenagers certainly aren't. So I think one of the main things that has stuck with me today is just that the sort of the how we frame things, how we market things, how we kind of sort of add cycling into another activity or make it fun, or, you know, just instead of focusing on the kind of racing aspect, we need to focus on making it enjoyable and marketing it in that way as well. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining the call. It's been fascinating.
That's great. Thank you, Julia. Tiffany, I think you've created a little army of people who are prepared to do your bidding for you, because there was certainly some interest in the, you know, sort of some of the areas that are outlined. Just keen to understand, I guess, a call to action to the clubs, because really, if we do get this right, we improve that social element, we keep girls in the sport, and then maybe some of them show an interest in racing, get really good at it. That's when they come over to you. So, what would be your call to action for everybody on the call tonight?
For me, yeah, just try and get more and more girls into the sport. I'm gonna put my email. I might regret this, but I'm gonna put my email in the chat. And those clubs, I think it was it Lloyd who someone had a really good club who've got loads of girls in their club. If you could send me an email, yeah, it was Lloyd, and I will look to come and visit your club at some point and sort of see what best practice you've been doing. Hopefully then we can share that with other clubs. So I have been reading the chat, because when I was speaking I didn't read it, but I've just been reading it now, and there's some brilliant points in there. So thank you very much for that. And yeah, I'm going to put my email in the chat if you wanted to send me some information about things that you've been doing in your club, or if you want me to come and visit your club. Like Lloyd said, I'll try and turn up there and see what things have been going on there. But it's been really useful for me. Like Julia said, thank you very much for everyone that turned up and contributed towards this as well.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Tiffany. And my call to action would be, if you email education@britishcycling.org.uk, if you have any images of girls and women activity going on, or you can tweet at BC Coaches, you'll get a retweet. And I think one of the things that has come about imagery about seeing girls cycling is really important. So the more imagery we can get out there of it is really important. And if the imagery comes through to the education inbox, we can you know, put it on the courses as well, and start to facilitate the discussions around that. We don't have many. I don't think we've got too many members of the British Empire on here, so I'm going to leave it to Helen Scott to close with some final thoughts. I hope you've enjoyed it tonight, Helen. Thank you again for attending. You know, you're looking to up your coaching and things. What have you taken some lessons for tonight, or did anything resonate with your experience?
I mean, it put me well under pressure here, Robbie, to try to close, especially after Julia and Tiffany have so well yeah, said exactly. I mean, they've taken the words out of my mouth. I mean, everything Tiffany said through that PowerPoint. I've written your name down, Tiffany, because I'm like, I must work with her. I'm like, I could, same as everybody on this call. I mean, we could talk about this all night, couldn't we? And I think it's been like, I guess, affirming to me as well about what's going on sort of with young girls, and not dissimilar to what I guess I experienced as a girl myself when I first started racing. And I think, you know, I guess I'm in a privileged position now, because I was one of the lucky few to have continued cycling and still am, and have made it sort of my job. But I'm very passionate about my sport, because I got into it because I loved it. And I'm so passionate about girls joining our sport and enjoying it, not just to become a professional cyclist, but because it's just a fantastic sport. And I think British cycling and everybody involved in this kind of thing need to, well, we've got a duty to promote it, for not just, if you're brilliant you should do this. It's if you enjoy it, and there should be races that, you know, it doesn't matter whether you win or lose, but enjoying the racing for what it is, and the day that it could be, and the friendships that you can make, and the health benefits. It's not just because you've got the talent team, or it was called talent team. Me and Joanne were saying that it was called talent team when we were at that age, and ODP, you know, not, yes, it's fantastic if girls are striving to do that, but they shouldn't be, it's not the be all and end all, and it shouldn't be the only reason that they're in the sport. And and as coaches, it's up to us to promote that, you know, you're fantastic whether or not you're going to make it to the Olympic Games or not. And we encourage you to ride and enjoy racing for the joy of racing. So that sort of hit home a lot to me tonight. So Tiffany, Julia, I want to work with you too.
I love that Tiffany's just basically booking in a touring feast of Britain Haggis in the north, down to pastas in the south. Brilliant. Thank you,
Oh,
Helen.
right.
Helen, you are competing in Tokyo, aren't you? All fingers crossed, everything crossed.
All being well, hopefully.
I'm so sorry to. Is this true? I don't know if I'm being sold on it. Di Murray, you MBE as well. Have I stitched myself up? Was I unaware, or is Scott absolutely selling me down one here?
No, he's not selling you 11. It is true, but I was late to the call, so you wouldn't have known. So I apologise that you were sidewalled there.
Lovely to have you. Thank you. So it's two on the call. What an evening. Well, look, we're going to close. Conscious of catch you in the 10 minutes than I said you would. Been absolutely loved the conversation tonight. I've got loads of takeaways, and I'm sure me, Julia, and Tiffany will catch up and try and consolidate our thoughts. But thank you so much. Do keep the conversation going with us. Have a wonderful Christmas and a New Year, and just a little Christmas treat for all of you. I'm going to give you free access to our Ready Set Ride course. It might have some ideas that might inspire you to think differently about how you put on some of your coaching sessions, just to have a little bit more fun. Less cones, more chalk, that kind of thing. So I'll be giving you access to that tomorrow. I do have the coach-athlete relationship course. The link is in there, so do have a click on that. You do have to apply, but I applied, and then they've got the login details straight after that. So have a look at that. But have a great Christmas, New Year. We'll see you on the next one. The topic for that will be announced soon, but it's going to be around about skill development, skill acquisition, that kind of thing. All the best, all. Thank you for taking part tonight, and thank you for everybody that supported. All the best.